We're going to try to get our program started. This is obviously a new venue for us. So we gave a little more time for everybody to get their food and kind of get used to the new order. I think it's real important for us to thank and give our condolences to the Kwan family. The Kwans have supported us for a long, long time, and we really appreciate that, and we certainly are very sad for their loss. But I also want to be positive and thank Marco Polo for adopting the orphans, and I think this will work out well, and we just want to tell them how much we appreciate them letting us be here. We do have some special guests in the audience. We have some people running for office. The first one on the list is Bill Burgess, and of course he is his usual self. Oh, he's sick. Oh, I'm sorry, Cindy. He won't be joining us later. I guess the campaigning can do that to you in these days. But Deb Patterson is here. She's candidate. Anyway, she's the candidate for Senate District 10, and we have the candidate for House District 18, Barry Shapiro. And of course, our speaker I will introduce in a few minutes. Did we miss anybody who's running for office? Okay, we didn't. Good for us. Okay, we also want to introduce our Marion County Democrats, our chair, Barbara Fuller. We have a program committee, and Barbara's on that too, as well as being chaired by Cindy Kimball. And our videographer, who makes sure that our faces become famous on CCTV, Raymond Dukes. And I have a reminder here on the paper they gave me, please silence your cell phones. Yeah. I forgot to do that at a movie the other day, but fortunately there were only 5 of us in the audience. So for today's guest is Mike Ellison. He is running, I messed up the numbers, but he's running for House District 19. He comes from a working class family with deep Oregon roots. He's a union electrician. Yay. He's a husband and father of 3 amazing boys. He has a bachelor's degree in electrical engineering from the Oregon Institute of Technology, followed by a master's degree in renewable energy engineering. Boy, do we need him in the legislature. As your state representative for House District 19, Mike will be an undaunted advocate for our working class and low-income families. He will remain steadfast and immovable in his pursuit of social and racial equality. He will fight to ensure our veterans, elderly, disabled, poor, and our children receive the care and services they need. He will work to create long-term jobs that provide higher pay, better benefits, and lead us into the future while ensuring that we protect Oregon's beautiful landscapes and natural resources. But after reading his credentials, he can do that. So please welcome our guest today, Mike Ellison.
Thank you. I think you took about half my speech, though. Hi, my name's Mike Ellison, and I am running to represent Oregon's House District 19 in the Oregon Legislature.
And you're going to win.
So I just want to reiterate the thank yous. Thank you to Cindy Kimball for putting together such a great event. and for finding us a new location. And thank you to Marco Polo for hosting this. Thank you to Barbara, Fuller, and Carla for always doing such a great job with these types of things, and the Marion County Democrats for always being a big support to all the candidates in the area. And thank you to the other candidates that have stepped up and decided to run in what I feel is the most important election that I've seen in my lifetime.
Yes, it is.
So thank you to Barry and Deb and Bill, who is a man after my own heart for always being late, even though he is sick today. We usually roll in places about the same time. So, and thank you to past candidates, Bill Dalton, who's been a huge help on my campaign, giving me the do's and don'ts and what worked, and just being a huge help, Bill, and I appreciate everything. So, applause. So I'll start out by, a lot of you already know who I am, and but some of you might be hearing from me for the first time. So I'll just, run through a little biography of who I am, where I'm from, and then we'll kind of get into what I believe in and why I decided to run for office. So as Carla said, I'm a fifth-generation Oregonian. My great-grandma Mary was born in Albany in 1900, which is where I was born a few years later. My parents divorced when I was very young, so most of my life I grew up in a single-parent household with my mother, and then also with my brother and sister, who, when you have, when you're living with a single mother who works incredibly hard to try and make that family work, she was gone a lot, and I know she didn't have as many opportunities to be around as much as she would like to, but that's because the situation we were in required her to be at work a lot. She often worked 2 jobs to make sure we had a roof over our head and food on the table, and so my brother and sister ended up being a pretty big influence over my upbringing. I started working in middle school. My first job was picking strawberries at a farm right around the corner from our house. I delivered newspapers for a couple years. I worked in a car wash, and then I went back. As I got older, I went back working on the farm where I spent summers bucking hay, moving irrigation pipe. Some couple jobs that I don't really wish on anybody, but definitely made me who I am. So my mother was a construction secretary and a bartender, waitress growing up. My dad is a truck driver who, after working for years as a driver for certain companies, decided to start his own, and got all the way up to where he had 22 trucks at one point, and then 2008 happened. And so ended up having to sell off all his trucks and went out of business because of the recession and what happened on Wall Street. During high school, I was appointed by Congressman DeFazio to be a United States congressional page. So my whole junior year of high school I spent in Washington, D.C. working for the U.S. House of Representatives, and the impact that had on my life was tremendous. Just being able to witness how our legislature works firsthand. It was a very interesting time in history. I was only supposed to be there for 1 semester. So the first semester of the school year, I was there serving as a Democratic page, and that was the 94 midterms. So for the first time in 40 years, the Republicans took control of Congress. And looking back, it's not a great thing, but at the time, it meant that I got to stay for the whole school year because the Republicans didn't have enough time to fill their page positions as the majority party. So I was appointed by a Republican from Arizona named Jim Colby and got to stay the whole year. But just the experiences I had during that, I got to be on the floor of the U.S. House during a State of the Union address, President Clinton's 95 State of the Union. I met Nelson Mandela and was on the floor of the House when he gave an address to a joint session of Congress. And just being there through the entire process. I don't know if many people remember the contract with America, where they tried to force through 100 bills in 100 days. And what that meant for Pages was that oftentimes we were at work when House was in session, and they were breaking records for the amount of time that they were in session, often going over 24 hours at a time. So it was it was amazing and incredible, and very unfortunate that happened. But I think we have a real opportunity in this election, not only to undo things that have happened just recently, but attacks on the working class that have been happening, since that '94 midterm and even before that. When I came home from that year in Washington, D.C., back to West Albany High School for my senior year, I had a pretty hard time readjusting to normal small town life. I lost some focus and really struggled with where I thought I was going to go. So I finished my senior year of high school, played basketball all the way through, and ended up going back east for my freshman year of college, where I was playing basketball at the Catholic University of America. And my first time being away from home without supervision. When we were a Page, we had very good supervision. So I realized that I was not ready to be a college student at that point. So I came back home, started working again, and that summer after my freshman year of college, I lost my brother. He drowned in a tragic accident, and that, as I said before, he had a tremendous impact on my upbringing, so that really affected me. And that's when I started experiencing some of the other issues that my family had gone through in the past, several generations of alcoholism and depression. And so I fell into that trap. And so there was many years where I wasn't on the right path. I wasn't living up to my potential, and I wasn't, doing the things that I had thought all along that I would be doing. Fast forward a little bit, I met my wife. She was my neighbor. She lived in an apartment right behind a house I lived in with some friends. I was working as a bartender, and we met each other over the fence. And fast forward a little bit more, we had our first son, Corey, who is right now getting braces put on. And that's why Maggie's not here today. She is busy with that, the orthodontist appointment. But right after he was born, I made a commitment to get back to that life I was on when I was in high school. And so I completely quit drinking and haven't looked back. Corey will be 15 in November, and he's really he's the rock of the family, even though he doesn't really understand or know why. I often call him, the rock. So he's a freshman at Sprague. I also have Ethan, who is a 7th grader at Judson Middle School. And then I have Wesley, who is a kindergartner at Sumter Elementary. So 3 kids all going through the Salem-Keizer public school system. And yeah, I mean, Dad is easily the thing that makes me most proud. And having those guys that are all good kids and doing well, and the fact that I'm able to provide them with a good life and hopefully opportunities in the future, because I think that's what life's all about. It's about, some people might call it the American dream, and the opportunity to leave our children better off than we were. And I know my parents, despite their struggles and differences, that there's no doubt they did that for me. Both of them extremely hard workers and always willing to make the sacrifices to make sure that I had what I needed. So, how'd I get here? After I finished as a Page and witnessing, politics up close, I really didn't have any desire to be involved anymore. There's some really gross things that happen behind the scenes, and it just wasn't something that I was, although I always remained an informed and active voter, getting involved in the political process was just, it was something that I was turned off to for a long time. And then 2016 happened. And so as I was finishing my schooling, let me back up just a little bit. So after we had Corey, I needed a career. A bartender was a great job, fun job. I loved it, but not exactly the type of thing that somebody who's recommitting themselves to be a good father it wasn't right for me anymore. Nights and weekends were not exactly where I wanted to be. So I got into the electrical apprenticeship with help from my mom that had been in the construction business for many years, and went through the residential journeyman program. So 2 years of apprenticeship, I became a residential journeyman, and I was wiring houses through the boom, when Salem was really putting up houses at an amazing rate. And then again, 2008 hit, and there wasn't any houses to wire anymore. So I went back into the apprenticeship to work towards my commercial and industrial license. And while I was doing that, Maggie was in school over at Western Oregon University working on her bachelor's degree in American Sign Language interpreting. So I finished my apprenticeship about the same time she finished with that degree. And during that time, I was also working weekends and nights bartending to make sure that we were comfortable and able to afford things and, have everything our children needed to have a quality life. So about the time she was finishing her bachelor's degree, I was finishing my second stint through the apprenticeship. And I decided I needed to go back to school. So Maggie graduates right before I finished apprenticeship. I enrolled at Oregon Institute of Technology at their new campus up in Wilsonville, which is very well designed for working people. So I was able to work full-time as an electrician and go to school nights and weekends, where I completed the coursework for a bachelor's degree in electrical engineering, and they offer a program called the 4+1. So basically taking all the coursework you'd done before, add another year in another field, renewable energy engineering, you could earn that master's degree in another year. It was a strenuous schedule, but it allowed me to get that degree quicker. And when I finished that, I thought that my background as an electrician, as somebody that's been in the field and doing installations, electricians always complain about engineers because we're the ones out in the field, and why would they design it like this? So I actually had one of my apprentice instructors that found out I was going back to get my engineering degree. He says, "I've always been curious, so let me know, at what point do they open your head and remove your brain?" So I thought that having that experience behind me and becoming an engineer, and in this burgeoning new economy of renewable energy and transitioning that way, I was really looking forward to starting a career in that and doing everything I could to make sure that we were transitioning the right way. And that's when I realized that the new administration that we had just elected in didn't really care about that like I did. So as I was finishing my coursework and watching the new administration just, take away so many great things we had done, the Paris Climate Accord, low energy incentive programs and things like that, I thought that maybe this new knowledge and my background would be better served in the state legislature. And during the 2016 election, I had gotten involved with the campaign. I'd become a PCP, got active with the Marion County Democrats and the Democratic Party of Oregon, served on the DPO Budget Committee, and just had found a renewed interest in being of service through that process. For the several years before that, I'd always had the desire to be of service to others. So whether I was, just the friendly neighbor that had the car that said electric on it, that neighbors thought they would just knock and ask me to come look at something, I was always willing to do that. But I also would donate my time as an electrician for Habitat for Humanity, Father Taft Homes, Catholic Community Services, and volunteering through the YMCA. So that desire to be of service was always there. And 2016, really pushed me towards trying to be of service in the political process and working to make change that way. So that's pretty much how I got here. With the desire to be of service leads one towards, and I don't know if you're familiar with the term servant leadership, but servant leadership is basically about having the natural desire to be of service and then making the conscious choice to lead. So deciding to do this was me making the conscious choice to be of service through leadership. And, with my background as, growing up in a blue-collar family, raising kids in a blue-collar family, and just having a very strong belief that the America I love provides opportunities and removes barriers so that people can better themselves. And I really think that is slipping away. So when I was first approached about, maybe running for office, I thought that maybe I wasn't the right person. I think number one, my first thought is we've got a lot of white dudes in office. Yeah. Maybe I'm not the best person. So some friends that had approached me were, look through the district to find maybe somebody from an underrepresented community that would be a little better representative for that district, and nobody was interested. The district's been Republican for over 20 years, so it's very hard to get excited about putting your name on the line and stepping up to run for something that I think in the beginning a lot of people saw as hopeless. And I heard that a lot, that, thank you for doing this, it's a super long shot, but, we're behind you. And so we got some good fortune along the way. A week after I filed, the incumbent resigned to take a job with the Home Builders Association as a lobbyist. So, just right off the bat, all of a sudden, people that a week before were saying, best luck, were now calling and saying, hey, what's going on? What'd you do? I had nothing to do with it. It really got people excited about this race, and it got me really excited about this race, and just provided more opportunity to talk to people about, again, who I am, where I'm from, and what I believe in. And that's, since day one, that's what I've wanted this campaign to be about. Win or lose, good or bad, if I can stick to who I am, where I'm from, and what I believe in, then I'll feel good about this at the end of the day. So as we've gone on, talking about making the American dream a reality, making sure that everybody has the same opportunities or better opportunities than I had. So when it comes down to it, I'm running because I believe in an Oregon that can and should work for everyone.
Yes.
As a father of three, I'm running because we must begin to prioritize investments in our future. And I wanted to set the example for my own children that there comes time in life when you have to commit to what you believe in and do whatever it takes to make sure that those beliefs are being, you're speaking about those beliefs and doing everything you can to make sure those things happen. With my three kids, I've always been pretty active in visiting them in school, taking them lunch, sitting in classrooms, volunteering whenever I can. And so I've witnessed firsthand the tremendous burden that we place on our teachers and the lack of service that our children are getting compared to the level of public education I got just a couple decades ago. Coming through the Albany public schools, I had teachers that not only had the time to recognize potential, but had the time and energy to spend working with students to help them realize that potential. And without that in my life, there's no telling where I'd be. And so I think we're missing that with the workload that we're putting on our educators. And I think it's time to change that. I'm running because working families need a voice. If you look at our legislature, and it's a so-called citizens legislature, but it's not set up for working people to run for office. The pay is very low, and it's an incredible amount of time that takes to do a good job as a representative. So we end up with, independently wealthy folks and people that own their own business and retired people that, not that there's anything wrong with retired people, Bill. Unless they're going on vacation right before the election. So in order to create a more representative legislature here in the state, I think we need more working people to step up and run. And so that was a big draw for me. When we have working people in office that will fight for an economy that works for all of us, and fight against corporate greed that has gotten us to where we are and led to the incredible income inequality that we're experiencing, not only in this state, but across the country and around the world. Working people are the antidote to that. So, so you've heard my story, and you've kind of, have an understanding of how I was able to get here. And yeah, I put in a lot of hard work and I committed to do things, but there was so many things that happened along that path that were completely out of my control that lended a hand to where I'm at. So like I talk about, having teachers that had the time to invest in me. I talk about, having doors open and people to care for my children while I'm working 2 jobs or going to school and working during the day. Just fortunate situations that I had nothing to do with. And so that is what bothers me so much about opportunities for the American dream nowadays, is there's so many people that don't have the privileges that I had in whether it was my education or my family structure or an employer that allowed me to take time off work and do the things I wanted to do. And so we're holding people back. And there's far too many barriers. And if I was from a different demographic when I was going through a tough time in life, there's no telling whether or not I would have got caught up in the criminal justice system or faced discrimination for other reasons. If I didn't have people that could, I had free childcare, so to allow me to be gone nights and weekends. And how many people are there that don't do those types of things because they can't afford for their children to be taken care of? I had an employer that provided really good health care. Being a union worker, that's one of the best parts about it, is that I'm able to go see a doctor whenever I want. But how many people don't have that opportunity? And these are the things we need to change. We need to provide opportunities and remove barriers. So, that's, when it comes down to it, that's the reason I'm running, is so we can move towards that and make sure that the American dream is a reality for everyone. So as a STEM candidate, and that's someone with a background in science, technology, engineering, and mathematics, which another area that I think we could use many more of in our decision-making processes. People that understand science does not have an agenda, that are willing to put in the research and think outside the box and come up with solutions for the problems we're facing. And there's no doubt that we're facing problems. The data is clear as day. we're witnessing it firsthand, the effects of climate change and what it's doing to Oregon and America and the globe. How bad things are getting, and I think it's getting worse quicker than a lot of people thought it was going to. So as a STEM candidate, I'm running because we must work towards a just transition away from fossil fuels. And while we're doing that, we need to protect the workforce. We need to protect workers. We need to provide opportunities for training in these new fields. And we need to make sure that that the jobs that should be high-paying jobs that provide great benefits, we need to make sure they're doing that. And so one of my main goals, if I'm lucky enough to be elected, is to work with that clean energy jobs bill and make sure that that thing has teeth. Make sure that it's providing the type of jobs that we deserve in those fields, and that it's getting us to where we need as far as our greenhouse gas emission goals. One of the first things I faced when I decided to run for office, being a union tradesman and an environmentalist, I had a lot of people say, that doesn't work. What are you talking about? You can't believe in labor and the environment. And it, I still hear that a little bit, but it just doesn't make any sense, because to me that seems like just such a natural alliance between those two. We have this place we need to be. We need workers to get us there. Let's do it. And so that's, something I hope we can overcome. And I've worked hard up till this point to speak with all the stakeholders in the labor community and in the environmental community. And I have more meetings coming up with the Blue Green Alliance to make sure that this is our focus. Because our fight is not with those two. We can support labor and we can support the environment very easily. I do it. So when we're looking at, labor just wants great jobs. Environmentalists want clean jobs, and there's no reason we can't have those be the same thing. Those two things get pitted against each other. And I have to remind my environmentalist friends that the fight isn't with labor. Labor is doing what labor has always done. They are standing up for workers. Labor has never been a provider of jobs. Industry does that. So our fight should be with industry, not with hardworking people that just want to make sure they have a good paycheck and good benefits and somewhere safe to work. And so if I can do one thing through this, it's hopefully to lessen that gap and convince a few people that the fight is not between the environment and workers. I'm running because I believe Oregon belongs to all of us. As an ally, I'm running to fight for racial and social equity and to amplify the voices that have been ignored for far too long whenever I'm called on to do so.
Mike, I'm calling on you.
I'm here. I'm here.
You have been.
Thank you. So, I don't know how we're doing on time, but it feels like I've been up here forever. Sure. Yeah, we can do that. And then I'll finish it up at the end. Yeah. Okay. Yes.
Okay, Mike, as one who supports your candidacy and your election, and I want to go to the party, definitely. And as a single mom, who's interested in how pay raises are meted out, and knowing and remembering that there is no planet B. So I agree with everything that you said. There is no division between labor and the environment. It dovetails, actually. How do you propose to fight for all of that? And also, how do you feel about women's rights and the ERA amendment that may be coming up again because of a lot of developments of today? How do you see
So let me just make sure. So the first question was, how do you make sure that we're fighting for the environment and workers at the same time?
Right.
And then,
The pay raise too, money, I mean, my gosh, and homelessness is such a huge issue right now.
so I think the main thing is, or the first step would be ensuring that we have a well-trained, highly qualified workforce capable of taking on the kind of jobs that we need to invest in. So infrastructure projects that, improve so much about our state and transition us to a clean, green economy. Those are, for the most part, technical jobs that people will need to be trained for. So a heavy investment in education, K through 12, with a focus on career and technical education. I think we need to, restore the belief that apprenticeships are, high quality and value them. I don't, like I said, when I first got out of high school, I was not ready for college, and I was so fortunate to find the trades and be able to get into an apprenticeship that taught me a career, and a good paying career, without debt. And so focusing on that for the jobs of the future, so career and technical education and apprenticeships are huge. And then just convincing people that investments in the future are important. We continuously neglect to do that, and we neglect our infrastructure, and we neglect our energy delivery systems, and just so many things down the line. Obviously, we need funding to do that. So one of the things that I will fight for is to make sure that those who are most successful in our state are paying their fair share. Starting with, the multinational corporations that are essentially paying zero taxes in Oregon right now. It's just wrong. And other methods to make sure that wages are doing okay is, I think we need to start, fining corporations, large corporations that have a large number of employees on public assistance. So let's make them pay for what we're paying for. And then as far as reproductive care, I fully support a woman's right to control her own body, and I will do everything I can to make sure that Oregon remains a leader in that fight. I don't want to get too much into what's going on the federal level right now, but it's pretty disgusting. So.
Jen Argosian, Polk County. Would you do two things? Tell us where District 19, what it is.
Oh, yeah.
Because I don't know. And secondly, everything you talk about gets right down campaign financing.
Mm-hmm.
And so I'd like to hear you talk a little bit about that.
Yeah, so House District 19 covers South Salem, where I live. So basically anything south of Kubler over to Skyline, all the way out past Willamette Valley Vineyards, all the way over to Almsville, up Howell Prairie, all the way to Sunnyview, over to Corden, and then down through Four Corners, and it cuts through kind of by where the Fred Meyer is on Madrona and Commercial, and then goes down to Commercial to Kubler. So pretty large area. I don't see Danny here, so I can say I have a large district. Danny Jaffer's district's much larger than mine. Yeah, a lot of ground to cover. It's about 2/3 suburban population-wise, and about 1/3 rural population. Size-wise, it's the opposite. So it's about 2/3 rural, 1/3 suburban. And campaign finance is another big goal of mine. I'd love to see us implement some type of small donor campaign system that encourages more activity in the political process and allows more people to enter in. My campaign's been solely funded by individuals and labor organizations. So we have over 250 individual donations that average right around $100 a piece. And then all of the unions in the area have provided some level of support, obviously with a big number coming from my own union, IBW, but that's just me getting my union dues back. Mark.
Yes, Mike over here, Frank is the custodian of the building. I'm replacing the fluorescent bulbs with the new bulbs, and Mike has agreed to do all the work. And so when you come into the building, I want you to pay attention to the lights. I've helped him put the light bulbs, and I hold him, he takes the old ones out, and I hand him the new ones.
That project got slowed down a little bit, didn't it? Yeah. Well, thank you, Art.
Also, I'm a firm believer in vocational education. I went through a vocational school to get my baking degree. Now, how many of you have been out to that vocational place there on Portland Road for the high schools? You ought to go out there and take a tour. You go out there and call them and take a tour. And in fact, they're talking about bringing the chef program back to Chemeketa Community College at some point, and they will have it out there, but when it's going to happen, I don't know.
Yeah, Bill.
Education. Obviously, you've had experiences that have been very positive. You've seen your kids go through now 3 basic levels of what we have. Education seems to be on everybody's agenda, Republican, Democrat, affiliated, independent, working party. Based on your experience, personally, and what you've seen and heard during the campaign, what are some of the specific things that you feel you might be a part of providing leadership for in the way of change through our legislature that may make a positive difference in our current educational system?
For me, just from what I've witnessed in my own experiences with my kids, it doesn't all come down to, but it starts with class size, and quality classroom time. So, my middle schooler, I spent a half day sitting through social studies and science class a few months ago, and every period, which is 50 minutes long, there was, I think the smallest class was 34, the largest was 38. I have a hard enough time controlling my 3 for 50 minutes just to eat, which is something they're naturally supposed to do. So I don't know why we're expecting teachers to relay this information to our children when there's 35-ish of them and in a 50-minute period. So, I mean, it starts there for me. And then just getting back to the understanding that not all kids are the same. I have 3 very individual sons that are all different, and they all learn differently, and they all like different things. And trying to streamline education is exactly the wrong thing to do.
But how, as a legislator, do you see yourself impacting the very issues and problems that you're obviously well in touch with?
Regardless of whether or not we can fix our lack of revenue, the focus needs to be put on education. So we've been in this cycle of cuts and cuts and cuts, and that needs to stop. Regardless of whether or not we can find revenue elsewhere, education needs to be priority. So if whether that means finding other things to cut, or just doing things differently, that's where my priority is, and that's what I'll fight for in that process, to make sure that a fully funded educational system is our number 1 priority. Left.
The big elephant in the room here, being a tier 1 retiree, is fixing PERS. And, we can't get extra money for education if we've still got this churning on us year after year after year. You got any new ideas out of the box on that?
One thing that I really like, and first of all, I mean, there really is no fixing PERS. The courts have said that agreements that are made have to be kept, and I fully agree with that in theory and in practice, that when you make an agreement, you keep it. I also don't think that, lowering compensation for current state employees or future state employees is a good thing either, because we want to make sure that those working in public service are, as are good people, and that'll do a good job. And if we're undercompensating people, we're going to lose, highly qualified candidates for those positions. One thing I like, and North Dakota's implemented a state bank, a state-run bank that handles their public employee retirement system and allows them to invest a little more carefully and generate a little more revenue. With us having a big new tax source from marijuana revenue, being able to put that into a state bank can pay huge dividends to us, and might help with funding PERS and other things. Obviously, fixing our tax structure is very important. We continuously put a burden on the middle class, and other unforeseen things that you don't really think about, whether it's parking or regulatory fees or permit fees or things that local jurisdictions can have control over when they're underfunded. That that's where they go get their funds. So it's not just our taxes, but that stuff shows up at other places too. So taking some of the burden off middle class people when it comes to the revenue in Oregon is very important.
Do you have anything exciting to say on to fix homelessness? That seems to be on every list that you see on what people's priorities are. Everybody's saying, take care of homelessness. So, you have anything magical there?
Yeah, magical. Well, I like I said, I have a background in science, technology, engineering, and mathematics. So logic and reason I would prefer over magic. So I think it's a multi-pronged approach. It starts by protecting tenants to make sure that people on the lower income scales have stable housing, and that their housing is not a barrier to their economic mobility. So capping rent hikes and severely limiting a landlord's ability to no-cause evict, I think, are a good start for housing. Just recently in Salem, we've seen people that were forced out on the street that obviously could not afford another place to go. And I understand the need to remodel that unit, but if you want to get rid of these people, then you need to have some kind of relocation assistance to make sure that we're not just pushing them out on the street. So I think that's step one, is making sure that our tenants are protected. Step two is doing everything we can to increase our stock of affordable units, whether that's converting existing buildings into residential structures. We've got tons of vacant commercial space in town that as long as the area around it is environmentally sound, there's no reason we can't start using that for housing. And then working with people that build homes to get back to the starter home. It seems like Salem is in this period where everything that goes up is a $350,000 to $500,000 house. And the reason for that is, like I said before, the amount of regulatory fees and permit fees that these builders have to pay up front before they're allowed to even break ground completely eliminates the starter home. So we need to do what we can to fix that. And then wages. I mean, it doesn't matter what rent is. If your wages don't meet what you have to pay to put a roof over your head, then the problem's never going to fix itself. So we need to rapidly get to a place where the money people are making, especially people working full-time jobs, that covers their basic necessities.
I have a suggestion.
Yeah.
Well, I'm a retired worker. I came up with a plan for homelessness, going through DMV, but they have to give all of their money back to ODOT. But what if the home people give to the homeless people? What if every escrow that closed, the seller had $100 that went to a homeless fund? The seller's gonna have the cash. The buyer, they're pinching it to get all their costs up anyhow, but the seller wouldn't miss $100 when you're closing a house.
Mm-hmm.
And so you could just have a rule, a law, I don't know what you're gonna call it, that every escrow, $100 goes to a homeless fund.
And these are the type of ideas that when you elect a servant leader, that will be there to listen, and yeah. So yeah, and that's key is people that understand issues better than I do. I'll be there to listen, and obviously that's a great idea, and it's outside the box. It's not something we've heard before, and we need more of that for sure.
I thought it while I was sitting here. That's true.
It's very inspirational.
I'm an out-of-the-box thinker, so
Yeah.
you'll hear some weird things from me along the line, I'm sure.
Hey, weird works. Weird can work. Yes.
Mike, I'm wondering if your energy background gives you any thoughts on really broad energy policy for the state. I happen to feel that a full-throated commitment to green energy would be also the best economic development strategy you could get. And if you want win-win-win, it's also the best climate change strategy.
Mm-hmm.
How would you work in your area to help at the highest levels in the state?
Well, I think that background is something that's missing in the legislature right now. I don't think we really have anybody that understands it from a labor perspective, or who can actually say, I'm a scientist that has studied these things. We hear a lot of people say, I'm not a scientist, but here's this nonsense I read on Breitbart. So, I mean, just that in and of itself, I hope will lend to that situation. And I agree that, yeah, we need to make an aggressive transition to 100% renewable energy, and be careful along the way to make sure that workers are protected. Also make sure that we're thinking about the future when we're doing these infrastructure improvements. Make sure we're not setting our children up for problems that they're going to have to deal with. And this is all stuff that I studied pretty extensively when I was in school. How to make that transition, and how to have it be extremely positive for the economy.
Say one more thing.
So I just wanted to finish with, everybody talks about the blue wave and how, Democrats are on fire right now, and the blue wave's just going to happen. I just want to make sure that everybody knows that this wave is not something you get to ride on. You are the wave, and make sure that if you want the blue wave to happen, make sure you're getting out there, supporting candidates, knocking on doors, making phone calls, text messages. There's all kinds of things that fit people's lifestyles that they can do to help get candidates elected. And if it's not me, make sure it's Deb or Barry or Shellaswa or Bill or somebody in the area. We need all of us. Thank you.
It's really nice when election season comes and we get to see the best come out and participate, and they're very inspiring. And I have known Mike briefly, and I've always liked him because I think he's a great guy. But what a background, and how important it is for us to get him into the legislature, because these are the issues that really matter to people and really impact people's lives. It's your kids, your jobs, and the environment that you live in. So thank you. Thanks to Barry, and thanks for Deb. I mean, they're just putting their heart and souls into their campaigns, and it's up to us to get out there and support them. I'm a little skeptical about the blue wave, and the only thing I would add to that is, and especially if people are watching on TV, Democrats seem to expect perfection from their candidate. If you have 10 issues and this person agrees with you on 8, it's like, well, that's no good. I don't know about you, but I'd take an 80% shot. So I think it's really, really important that they understand that all of my neighbors are Republicans, and they're wonderful people. But as a party, the Republicans don't have anything good for the rest of us. And so we do have to get out there in a way that maybe we're not used to. Maybe we're used to saying, oh, well, that person doesn't agree with me on everything. I want the perfect candidate. No, this time it's important for you to get out there, get your ballot in, and if you're not 100% happy, well, be satisfied with 70%. You know, that's a passing grade.